This episode of the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk podcast is brought to you by Andersen Windows. If you're a window installer, you deserve a simple choice: Andersen 400 Series windows. They're the windows contractors trust the most, based on a 2022 survey of U.S. contractors. Probably because they have fewer callbacks and extra peace of mind. And thanks to shortened lead times, they're available faster. Make your go-to windows Andersen 400 Series. Request a quote at andersenwindows.com.
I don't think you can just look at it from a monetary standpoint. I think that's important. If you do a lot of kitchens and you make a lot of money on kitchens, but you hate installing kitchen cabinets, maybe don't go down that road.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk podcast, our regular discussion with building industry professionals. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. Today I'm joined by builder and remodeler Andy Steele of FRS Builders in Purlear, North Carolina. You can find the Fine Homebuilding Pro Talk podcast and the original Fine Homebuilding podcast at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. You can leave feedback and ask questions there too. Hey Andy, it's great to see you again. Great to have you on the show.
Thanks, Patrick. I'm excited to be here.
You know, I think you're pretty typical of the professional builders who read FHB, use FHB.com, and listen to the FHB podcasts. Can you please tell me a little bit about your business, the kind of projects you do, how many employees and their roles?
Sure. Yeah, my business, FRS Builders, is a owner-operated general contracting firm. We do remodeling, lots of kitchens and bathrooms, finishing basements, that sort of thing. Also take on some smaller new construction builds as well. It's a small business. We've got myself and 2 employees currently. Self-perform all our carpentry work in-house. And yeah. You're
a bags-on guy. I've been to your job sites a couple times for Fine Homebuilding shoots. And do you like that part of the work?
Yeah, absolutely. I do enjoy it. The instant gratification you get seeing that your labor produced a product at the end of the day is always nice.
I think folks would argue with your assessment it's instant gratification in many cases.
Yeah.
It's agonizing gratification, maybe.
Yeah, it can be. Sometimes the back doesn't feel so great the next day, but that's...
What about book and record keeping and marketing and those kind of parts of the business you have to do too?
Sure. Yeah, I've got a bookkeeper that she's an independent contractor. She has, I don't know how many clients, but several, I'm sure, that she does bookkeeping for. She grew up in a family who's was in the trades as well. So she's familiar with construction businesses and the cash flow issues that can be a problem and invoicing, and really has done a lot to help me in terms of organizing my business and getting a handle on how much money you need to make, how much you need to charge. She's been more than just a bookkeeper, really.
Is that difficult, do you think, for your average builder and remodeler to get a handle on?
It is. I really think it is. There's a lot of content out there. People talk about know your numbers. I think Taunton even has a book, Nail the Numbers, or something like that, maybe.
I don't know if I don't think Taunton publishes that, but David Gerstel is the author, and it's widely regarded as a great business background text.
Yeah, and I think most contractors probably know they need to know the numbers, but I think at least where I fell short, maybe I'm unique in this, but figuring out how to get your numbers has been a real learning curve. All right, you need to know what your overhead is, you need to know all these things, but if you're a bags-on carpenter, you probably don't know how to get to those final equations and final numbers you may not know how to get there without somebody coaching you.
My recollection that you didn't start out in construction work. How did you become a home builder? Did you have folks that exposed you to it when you were growing up? How did that work?
Yeah, I went to college, got a Bachelor of Arts in Communications, took a job writing ad copy for a company that sold memory foam mattresses online, which is about as boring as it sounds. Um, there's only so much you could say about memory foam. Um, but anyways, yeah. So I was laid off from that job and was about to get married and in a panic trying to find a job. And I had a friend that was a contractor and always needed help. And I went to work with him. And he had a business similar in size to me. I think our crew, the largest ever, was 5 guys. Bags on business owner. And I stayed with him for 3 or 4 years and worked my way up from labor uh, to carpenter. So.
Did you know what you were doing at all when you started? Did he totally teach you how to be a carpenter?
No, I didn't. Um, I worked on the maintenance crew through college as a work study, but that was mostly cutting grass and weed eating and spreading
Moving
mulch.
furniture, as I recall,
Yeah,
was a lot of it, right?
yeah, moving furniture. But yeah, I mean, it was, you show up not knowing what you're doing on your first day at a construction site with like a tiny little hammer and a 16-foot tape measure, and get made fun of a lot. Um,
Were they good about teaching you though, or did you have to show initiative and figure it out on your own?
um, they were good about teaching if you asked questions. Like if you just were happy to be a laborer and pick up trash and move 2x4s and stack some material around, they would let you do that. But also, if you were in there trying to learn and ask questions, they were happy to explain what they were doing and why they were doing things the
I
way they
think that's
were.
quite a gift. It's not always the case, and I think it's also true that you give a little more consideration to someone who shows some initiative and has an interest in the craft and is not just collecting a paycheck.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I find myself doing the same thing with my employees.
So for a while, you worked getting houses ready for a sale through a large firm that was mostly fixing up houses that had been through the foreclosure process. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I was a project manager for that company. I had a territory that was about half the state of North Carolina and a little bit of Tennessee as well. And yeah, we would go in as a project manager. You would get a list of repairs that the real estate agent that was tasked to sell the house when it was ready recommended, and you had a price list you worked from that was agreed upon with the bank that owned the property. You kind of plugged in quantities, came up with your repair estimate, and then found crews to do the work. It was challenging from a financial standpoint because you've got obviously as a business to make money, and then the bank also has a margin they have to consider and how much money they can spend on the property. So the pricing was tough to find good qualified crews to do the work. And oftentimes you end up hiring a painter to paint the house and then coaching him through replacing a front door or rebuilding a deck or something like that. Um,
So you're the resource of you're the educational resource for someone who may be less experienced in carpentry work, trying to get it done.
yeah, yeah, and
Yeah.
I did a lot of that. I would, you know, even carry it around my tool belt and everything in the trunk of my car, and would work with the guys for a few hours or a day if I needed to.
It sounds like there was a lot of that going on at the time, and a lot of companies acquiring huge rolls of rental properties. Um, do you think that's still going on? And is the company you worked for still doing the kind of work you were doing?
Yeah, they are. And I'm still in touch with some of my coworkers from that company, and they're still busy. I don't think they've shifted. I think their client base a little bit from foreclosures because with COVID and legislation, they put a halt to foreclosures for a while.
Right.
That started back up, but they have a lot of these companies are, like you said, buying up just every house they can for long-term rentals. So they're doing a lot of that, getting those houses ready to rent now.
Hmm. You and I talked about it a couple times that I've been to North Carolina on your jobs. Uh, what are some of the challenges you're dealing with as a contractor, uh, dealing with right now as a contractor?
I mean, right now, I think the biggest challenge, I don't want to say supply chain because everybody's been talking about supply chain forever, is I'm seeing that get better slowly, which is nice. But it's the subcontractor base and getting subcontractors to show up when they say they're going to, and um, that's really difficult. And I've got good relationships with my subcontractors, but it's still like if your electrician or plumber says they'll be there on Monday, they might be there by Friday if you're lucky because I don't know.
They
They're
have too
just
much
so
work. They don't have
yeah,
enough help. Is that what the story is?
yeah. They're just booked out so far to try to get people in to do things in a timely manner is a real struggle.
Do you think it's worse for the sub trades than it is for builders and carpenters?
Yeah, I think so. I think like for an electrician, there's a lot of stuff you need to know, and you have to do that 100% correctly, or you're going to cause major problems down the road. Not that the same doesn't apply to carpentry, but it seems there's less background knowledge, I guess, you need. Like to work as an electrician, you're going to have to be a helper for a long time. I know our local community college has some trade programs where you can learn plumbing and electrical skills and that sort of thing. But even then, it's just building crews. There's not a lot of young people going into it. I'm one of the younger builders around at almost 40, and most of the guys I work with are in their 50s or 60s.
And you have young guys working for you too. Can you talk about that? You've been training them to be the employees you need because you had no labor pool to draw from. You had to build your own carpenters, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. I've got two guys, Vince and Dave. They're brothers. I hired Vince first, and he's been with me 2 years, maybe a little over 2 years now, and his brother is over a year. And this is their first outside of doing projects around the house. And they came from a family who had a background in the trade, so they had some experience growing up working on their own homes. But they've been really great, and the willingness to learn and ask questions and learn how to do things, and they're getting to the point where I can give them the tools and materials and some instruction on a job, and they can execute the labor part of it without a whole lot of input from me, especially if it's something they've done 2 or 3 times before, which is, as a business owner, really a big deal.
Yeah, and good for you for sticking with them and training them because it's an investment, right? It takes time and patience to make good carpenters.
Yeah, for sure.
What about some of the other things, Andy? You mentioned shortage of subcontracted labor. Other things that are making it difficult to be a contractor now?
Yeah. I mean, just, the labor pool, the supply chain is an issue, and getting materials and, still just a few weeks ago, I needed to buy, 200 2x4s for a job to frame a basement. And it's like, oh, well, we only actually have 85. So, yeah, I mean, you can go around to 3 different lumber yards and scrape together the stuff you need, which is a lot of what I spend my time doing when the first place only has a portion of what I need or not all of it. And then you just waste a bunch of time and gas and money driving around to get everything you need to do the job. And it's a challenge.
You've had something happen that I've heard other contractors in my social media circles talking about, which is new trucks that are unreliable and like having to wait months and weeks for repairs. Uh, that's got to be a challenge too. And you were lucky enough to have a friend who lent you one of his pickups so you could continue your work.
Yeah, I had a string of bad luck this winter with my pickup truck, and Needed some motor work done with 80,000 miles on it, and been well maintained, and those parts were back ordered, so it was sitting at the shop with the top end of the motor taken apart for a month and a half, something like that, before I got it back. And, and then I get it back, and the next week the window regulator breaks in the middle of wintertime, and I got to drive around for 3 days with my window down. That was
I've heard
fun.
other folks say the same thing, and sometimes it's months before vehicles can be put back into service. Like, how the heck do you deal with that when you're a contractor?
Yeah, like if I wasn't so fortunate to have somebody that had an extra pickup and was like, just keep it as long as you want, don't worry about it, I would have. I don't know what I would have done, because to rent, like if you needed to go rent a pickup, I think that was going to cost me like $600 or $700 a week. So
One of the other things that's always a challenge for contractors or clients. What do you wish clients better understood about your job as a contractor?
um, I think a lot of clients don't. I know they don't see it, and they probably don't think about all the kind of behind the scenes work that goes on, especially with a small company like me, where I'm on the job working every day. All that other stuff you got to do, the bookkeeping, that even if you have a bookkeeper, you still have to be involved in the process. You can't just totally be hands off. And the estimating, the calling, the subs, ordering materials, all that kind of stuff that's part of our job, the project management side of our job, that I don't think clients always understand if haven't been exposed to it in the past.
Do you think they would be more accommodating and give you a little more slack if they really understood the wealth of things you have to do?
Yeah, I think so. I think the construction industry for so long, and trades in general, has been, there's this stigma where you pay guys whatever, 10, 12, 14, $15 an hour. And so that's the labor cost. And a lot of clients expect you to work for that amount of money, and they don't take into account, all the payroll taxes and overhead and insurances and all this stuff that you have to have. And not every client's this way, and I'm fortunate that most of my clients aren't that way. But I know that's the kind of the mindset a lot of people have, of trading time for money, as opposed to running a real business with real employees with benefits and that kind of thing. Like, your customers have the same benefits from their job.
I
I don't see a reason why tradespeople can't have the same thing.
I hear over and over again that clients want to negotiate prices, and I don't think you'd do that with other services you're paying for. You wouldn't go to your bookkeeper or your lawyer and say, "Yeah, I can only pay you X. You have to do it for that." Why do you think clients feel entitled to set the contract amounts or argue about them?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I understand everybody has a budget they need to be within, and that's totally fine and normal. I really don't know why it is that in the construction world, it seems to be okay to say, well, if you price my job at $100,000, can you get it done for 85? It's like, well, I can do 85% of it. Yeah.
I can do another job for 85, right? But I can't do
Yeah.
this one. Yeah.
Yeah. If we could do a different one, but I don't know. I don't know if it's just the part of it being real estate and people always negotiate. Well, I shouldn't say always, because now they don't. Now you got to compete for houses. You're not negotiating so much anymore. I'm not sure. It's a pretty interesting thought, though.
I'm guessing a lot of folks who listen to this podcast are seeing signs of a slowing building economy. Are you seeing that too?
Yes and no. My area in the mountains in North Carolina is heavily populated with vacation homes and second homes and that sort of thing. And a lot of those folks, have the means to not be as affected um, in a recession as more what I would call, middle class housing.
Mm-hmm.
So we're still going wide open and I'm still getting phone calls for work. One sign or that I've had happen 2 times now is other contractors, um, specialty contractors. One recently was a kitchen installer calling looking for work to sub out from me. Usually I wasn't ever getting those phone calls for the last 2 years because everybody had more than they can do.
What do you think listeners should be doing in preparation for a slowdown, if they're going to have one? Have you got any advice for contractors who haven't had the experience of working in lean times?
Yeah, I would say, particularly for a new home builder that's only a new home builder, to start thinking about and looking at remodeling and if it's something that your business can take on, because it is a totally different animal than new construction. Um, but a lot of the skills still apply if you can get your business model to work with remodeling. Um, because I think that'll be the one of the last things to slow down. Obviously, people will still need their houses fixed if there's a catastrophe or some sort of damage. So being willing to take on some remodeling projects, some repairs, and outside of that, I mean, just trying to be smart with your decisions. Maybe if your truck's running, keep that truck and don't go buy a new truck, and take a good long look at your overhead and see what it's like, and identify places that you can lower it if possible.
Part of the reason I wanted to have you on the show is to pose your own questions to our audience, because I think you're much like the pros who listen to this show. Do you have any questions about construction or running a business you'd like to ask our listeners to weigh in on? They're usually very generous with their knowledge.
Sure. Yeah. One thing that I think is really important, especially in this business, because it can feel like you're on an island all by yourself because you're running a business by yourself, is finding like a peer group, um, to kind of, discuss and bounce ideas off of. I know a lot of contractors maybe don't like to do that and they see it as competition, but yeah, any kind of resources people have or directions outside of, obviously there's the Home Builders Association, which is a good resource, but I know there's other folks that have peer groups, and they do Zoom calls or whatever they are if they're not in the same markets, to kind of maybe a little bit trade war stories, but also just communicate with each other and ask advice and tips, and that'd be great to know.
Do you think that there's a natural hesitancy to share amongst contractors, like you're going to be giving away the business secrets you might have?
Yeah, I think there is. I think it's a lot of comes down probably also to like not wanting to give away your subcontractor if they're a good subcontractor and show up when you want them to. You're probably not going to be super excited about passing along that person's name and then having them not show up. But it's you got to have that mentality of rising tide floats all boats, right? And the kind of try to keep an abundance mindset and not a scarcity mindset and that sort of thing. And
I've heard it said that you should seek out contractors that you want to be like. It's very easy to do a better job, or at least you know what a better job is if you're hanging out with contractors who do a good job. I think you'd agree with that. How do you think you find those good contractors to help you with your business?
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with that. I think that applies to all aspects of your life, whether it's sport or business or contracting. If you surround yourself with people that you think are a tier or two above you, you're going to work harder to get to that level. And I think social media has been a good thing in that respect. The group of contractors on Instagram has been really helpful. I mean, like Mike Gerton one time. When I was working for that large company, I went to a trade show, and when I came back at our yearly meeting that year, I had to give a presentation on code compliant deck building. And I'd been to one of his courses at JLC, and I just sent him a message on Instagram, and he was like, "Oh, sure. Here, what's your email? I'll send you that whole slide deck." Yeah, I mean, what a guy. I think I want to be Mike when I grow up.
We all do.
Yeah.
So how do you think one finds your niche as a contractor? You specialize in remodeling for folks who have nice homes. How did you get there, and what advice would you give others on finding the place where they feel comfortable and make a decent living?
I don't think you can just look at it from a monetary standpoint. I think that's important. Um, if you know, if you do a lot of kitchens and you make a lot of money on kitchens, but you hate installing kitchen cabinets, maybe maybe don't go down that road, right? You can't make it be just a financial based decision, but I think um, you can specialize in one thing or the other. I would be a little hesitant right now to narrow my focus too much with all the talk of a slowing building economy, and so being able to have a wide skill set and um, find like where your skills, if you're a deck builder, you can try to think about where your skills as a deck builder could apply to other types of construction, whether it's framing or something like that. um, and I think there's always going to be a place for niche contractors like tile setters and painters and drywallers, all that. That's not going to go away, but I think just finding what makes you happy is honestly the best way to go about finding your niche. I would say, went the long way around to get to this answer, but I would say, identify the part of construction you like and what you want to do, and then figure out how to make that profitable.
Uh, you want to talk about your own house now? It's that part of the show where you come clean about any lingering problems you're ignoring or not.
Oh, my house is a special place. No, it's a good house. We bought this house from someone in my wife's family who built it. And she actually grew up in this house.
Cool.
And now we're raising our family here. It was built, in the 70s, and when we bought it, everything was exactly the same, down to the carpet, the curtains. Like, it had been replumbed, and the air conditioner had been replaced, and the roof had been replaced. But otherwise, everything was the same. So we've been, over the last 5 years, renovating the home. And as a carpenter contractor, I, on personal projects, tend to get them to the point of functionality and move on. The room I'm sitting in right now still doesn't have quarter round around the baseboards, and there's crown molding that hasn't been put up and paint that hasn't been finished. But life gets in the way.
You have little kids, and I think that probably makes it more challenging to get home projects done. Am I right?
Yeah, for sure. It's on a Saturday or Sunday when on one hand I could do work around the house, or on the other hand I could take the kids to the pool. That's not such a hard decision to make,
I think you have the right priorities, honestly.
Yeah.
Any future projects coming up on your place?
Yeah, we're planning a mudroom, laundry room remodel. We've got a big laundry room and a tiny mudroom, and we kind of want to flip flop that a little bit. As you mentioned, little kids in and out with lots of stuff. I think having a nice big mudroom and some built-ins in place we can, a dog bath so we can wash the dogs right there would be nice.
I think as far as ways to make a house more functional, that's got to be at the top of my list, is like having a nice place to put your winter gear on and take it off, and storage for all that stuff. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I've got a long list of exterior projects I've been wanting to do, but you live on the inside of your house, and that's where you spend your time. So painting the brick and replacing soffit and fascia and that sort of thing is on the list. It just never really gets moved up.
That sounds like lots of fun.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's been a pleasure having you on the show, Andy. Is there anything you want to ask or tell our audience before we go?
I know we covered a lot. I would just thank you guys for putting on such a good podcast, a series of podcasts you do. Appreciate it. And if anybody's listening for the first time, I would urge you to, explore more of Fine Homebuilding, what they have to offer. It's a lot of great information.
Man, let's leave on that note. Thanks, Andy. It's been a pleasure. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks to Andy Steele for joining us, and thanks to all of you for listening. Please remember to send us your comments, questions, and suggestions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. And please like, comment, or review us however you're listening. It helps other folks find our podcast. Stay safe, everybody. Keep craft alive. Thanks very much for listening.